Since I started recording these episodes, I've been wanting to work with sound. Sound is something very important, especially in computer games, but also in other kinds of programs. Unfortunately, if we check here the reference of processing, you will find here that there is nothing related to sound or audio. But the good news is that it's quite easy to add sound. If we go here to the sketch menu, and you can see here import library, and here there are several libraries we can use. One of them is called Minim Audio. A library is something that extends our program. So even processing does not have sound in itself. We can use this library, and then with a few lines of code we can add sounds. To find out how we can add sound to this little program I have here, it's a program where we have this circle bouncing around the screen. We're gonna use something here in the file menu called examples. This is a huge resource. This is very useful. You have probably here more than 100 programs you can just run, and you can explore the source code. So you can go from something like basic, like arrays here, and you can double click here or just press enter. And you have here a description, which is very useful. And down here the program, which you can just run and see the effect. In these video episodes, we have explored many of the topics here in the basics section. Some of the math, some of the image processing, these control functions here, conditionals, iteration. But there is also not so simple programs here. For example, inside topics, we can go here to simulate and flocking, just to see one example. And we can get this beautiful effect where all these triangles are flying around the screen as if they were birds. Sometimes they move on their own, and sometimes they join a group. So that's just one example. You can see this program here uses 3 source code files. Until now we just worked always with one, but you can see here the program is split in parts. You can have here one class and another class. But okay, let's not get lost here, and let's go to what we're looking for, which is sound. You can find here some examples inside libraries. And at the bottom here you have Minim Audio. And you have all these programs you can try to run. We are going to be using this one here called Load Sample. So let's start that program. Has a very good introduction here. You should read a very big comment. And maybe to operate the program, this is the most important comment, you have to press the key letter to make it sound. So first let's run the program and see what it does. And we get this black screen. And when I press here the key letter, we can hear a sound. Every time we press the key letter, we see this waveform here, and we hear some sound. Let's explore the program. The first thing it's doing here is importing the library. You need to type this line here to be able to use these sound features in processing. Next, we can see here that it's declaring 2 variables. One variable is called minim, the other variable is called kick, and these are the types. The type for this variable is also minim with uppercase M, and the variable type for kick is audio sample. Then this part we've seen before. We are declaring here the setup function and setting the size of the screen. This is very important. Here we start the sound engine. You can see here, up here we declare the variable. Here we are initializing the variable. This means here that start the sound engine, so we can play sounds. And down here we are loading a sample, so it's a sound file. You can see this is an MP3 file, and it's storing this sound inside this variable. So later we can play this sound. Let's continue down here. This part is not very important, so I'm going to skip it. Actually, we could even delete this part and the program would perfectly work. What it's doing is throwing this waveform every time the sound is playing. But we don't need that. We just want to hear a sound for now. And this simple command here is starting the sound sample that was loaded before. In this line, we loaded the sound, and every time we execute this kick.trigger, trigger starts the sound. And that's all. The only thing left is to close a few things here. So we need to copy this function also to our program. This function stop is executed every time we stop a program. When we press the stop button here, or when we just close the window, then processing will execute these few lines. And it's important to tell the sound library to close everything smoothly. So that's why we are adding this stop function. We are closing this audio sample, we are stopping the sound engine, and then we are stopping everything. I'm not going to go really into details like what does super mean or why is here this. For now, I just want to show you that you can copy parts of a program to add sound to your own program. To add sound to our bouncing ball program here, we are going to need a sound file. So let's go to a website called freesound.org. In this website, you have a search engine here, and we can search for something like water drop. And if we register, I am already registered and logged in. So if you do that, if you log in the website, you can come here and play the sounds, and you can also download them. So I'm going here to the waterdrop24.wav. If I go here to the right, I can download this sound file. I can choose a folder and give it a name. So instead of all this long name, because this would be hard to remember, I'm gonna call it just water.wav. It's good to keep the extension, don't change this. Sometimes you will work with WAV files, sometimes they will be MP3 files. If you want to rename it, just rename the part in front of the dot. So I'm gonna save there, this file. Now the file is saved, so I can go back to my program here. Now I have to add this file to my sketch, to my program. We've done this before with images. So I have to go here to add file inside the sketch menu. And I have to find the folder, and here's the file, water.wav. So I press OK, and now the file was added to the sketch. Now I just have to add here the code that will play this sound. And I can copy this from the program here, from this example, the load sample example. So we can copy first here the import, the two variables here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back here to my program and enter this at the beginning. Instead of kick, I'm gonna call this water, I think, which is a more appropriate name for our sample. Then here in our setup function, we will have to add this part that initializes the sound engine and the part that loads the sound file. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it here inside my setup function. I'm gonna paste this here. So this part stays equal. Minim is new minim this. These comments I can delete. And now my variable is not called kick, but water. So I'm gonna call this water is minim.load sample. And this is not bd.mp3, but it's actually water.wav. Okay, we are almost ready. Now let's go back here to our example, and we're gonna need to play the sound sometimes. So I'm gonna copy this. I could even just type it. Well, I'm being lazy. I'm able to type trigger, but okay, let's go back here. And now every time in this program where I'm hitting one of the borders and I'm flipping the direction, we have 4 cases. This is when we touch the right border, the left border, the bottom border, or the top border. In these 4 cases, we will play the sound. So I'm gonna add here, well, it's not gonna be kick trigger, but water trigger. And I'm going to add this line to all of these cases. Okay, almost there. Now I just have to copy this stop function here. I'm gonna copy the whole function, copy, and paste this in our program. Gonna delete this comment here. Okay, that should be it. Let's play the program and see what happens. We forgot to replace this kick here with water. Let's try again. There we have our first program with sound. You can see it wasn't so complicated. We just added here at the beginning an import line. Then we declared these variables. This is the sound engine, and this is one specific sound. You could have here as many sounds as you want. So you could add here audio, sample, for example, explosion or whatever. Later in your program, you would have to add another line like this. You would have to specify what is this explosion. So explosion is minim load sample explosion.wav or .mp3. And finally, you would have to trigger this sound sometimes. And don't forget here, if you added an explosion audio sample, then here you had to explosion close. So you would have to close all your audio samples when the program finishes. So I hope now you have fun adding sound effects to all of your programs.